The storm outside showed no signs of letting up or quieting down. Howling winds and loud rain were heard battering down upon the house the group of us were in. Due to the bizarre and unpredictable weather the area had been experiencing, this storm was turning out to be the once-in-a-century disaster that news agencies and governmental institutions proclaimed it to be. After we were able to hide within a room, one of us slammed the door shut, and the whole group of us threw as much furniture as we could against the door to barricade it, as we heard loud footsteps running down the hall and soon banging upon the door. The door itself was an older make, so it was thick and sturdy, but the aquatic creature was trying to get in, and we all knew that it was eventually going to. Everyone was silent in the darkened room. The only lights that were seen was the flashes of lightning and the sounds of thunder heard that came with the storm. I was standing there in the darkness just looking at the door, thinking back. I was born and raised in an island nation that had a rich and ancient history associated with the ocean and maritime life. Some of the oldest legends of my people mention that aquatic beings were the original inhabitants of the island, and that the people who later came aboard canoes from other nearby islands had a sort of peaceful arrangement or even treaty of cooperation with them to live upon the lands in their place, as these mysterious aquatic beings went to live within the oceans on deep caves under the surface of the island. This arrangement existed as such for thousands of years, until the pale-skinned foreigners arrived on our island in gigantic ships of differentiating designs. Our island people slowly died off through disease, slavery-related bondage, and convinced interracial marriages, until our combined population was just a shadow of the former amounts that we had scattered across the island itself. The legends said that if our numbers ever got too small, they would return and retake their place as the true rightful inhabitants of the island. As in modern times ocean levels began to rise along the coasts of the island at night, strange beings were seen in and near the water. Though no real features of them were able to be described, the islanders, we knew that it was them, the aquatic beings. The pale-skinned people dismissed claims of the aquatic beings of legend, but the islanders, we knew that they had returned. Storms that were rarely intensive in strength slowly increased in severity for the island as well as the people living upon it, until massive storms were a monthly occurrence. But news reported that a particular storm would be extraordinarily powerful, so much so that it would be the strongest storm to hit the island in more than 200 years. Most of the islanders weren't listening to the warnings, but a few of the island's population did. The day of the storm it rained, and it rained. Later the thunder was ear-deafening loud and the lightning was blindingly bright. As late enough in the night, screams and shouts were heard all over the island. They had emerged onto the surface during the storm. People were being killed by these beings, and as a result of the lack of description for the aquatic creatures, a mass panic ensued. Even where I lived, I saw them lurking and darting through the shadows, moving from building to building, swimming faster than the fish through the flooded waters that had risen within the streets. I ran. Everyone ran from them. What else could we do? As I continued to flee and later joined a group, we all fled together. We ran down a hill to a larger home at the edge of a peninsula, and a quick glance had it that it was already unoccupied. The storm had battered down the door and people fled into it. We were running down the hallways and corridors as wind and rain blinded us as we sloshed around hallways due to the water and debris slowing us down. After we were able to hide within a room, one of us slammed the door shut, and the whole group of us threw as much furniture as we could against the door to barricade it, as we heard loud footsteps running down the hall and soon banging upon the door. As the banging against the door became louder and louder, people were more and more afraid. As then, suddenly, the old door finally broke open as I decided to lunge forward and try to slam the door shut once more. Whatever was on the other side of the door tried to push it open, but I used my islander strength to hold it closed. I used as much effort as I could to push back against the creature on the other side. Glancing at the door, I saw through a sliver of the broken door a gigantic yellow and black eye staring at me through it. No human had an eye that large. Was it really one of the aquatic beings of legend? as it then pushed me and all of the debris back with an inhuman amount of strength as I flew back through the air and hit an opposing wall. As a result of the door being flooded open, an insurge of water rushed into the room as I tried to stand, but eventually was able to get back up. The other people in the room didn't try to dare attack the creature when it slowly came into the room. I couldn't even make out much features. It looked physically large, yet shorter than a human being. Lungs heaved in and out. Sacs also billowed outward then inward on different parts of its body. I saw the large yellow eye from the angle where I stood. Its fish-like lips licked, then licked again and again, as it then raised a thin claw and lunged at the crowd of us. There was chaos, and then a woman was slashed and then fell lifeless into the water that was still flooding into the room. It then turned and ran through a solid wall and out into the bay and jumped into the water and swam upwards back towards the main region of the island. Why? Why did the creature just target a single person and then leave? It was heading further back inland to attack other people? The entire crowd looked to the woman that was dead in the water. The flashes of lightning showed her physical traits. She was killed because she had mixed blood from the islanders as well as the paleskins. The others were saying that full-blooded islanders were not injured at all. The others said that they were full-blooded islanders. I said that I was too. Could that have been why we were not targeted? The person mentioned that the aquatic ones were going to kill all of the paleskins on their descendants. Others in the group were skeptical, as I then turned and looked out of the hole in the wall of the house, outside into the storm which was still raging. I spoke, mentioning that the person was right. As the crowd looked to me, I spoke again, mentioning that this was the only possibility that any of this made any sense. No one in the group spoke, as we were able to survive the night. On the following days, I later read and saw news reports when the storm ended. Anyone who had lineage from the pale-skinned foreigners were dead, but the aquatic ones were somehow able to tell who had foreign blood within them and who had not. The aquatic ones weren't specifically identified, as there were dozens of descriptions, however none of them were credible, but the island itself was destroyed in the process. The only thing that we could do now and for the future was to rebuild the island and live in unison with the aquatic beings once again.